Hey guys, welcome back to another Dragonheir video, and in this video we'll be going over an in-depth guide to Vortex. Now I've made a lot of team comps for this boss, and it's challenging when you are new, so don't be discouraged by you can't climb from one level to the other. I think everybody should be able to do two at least, no matter how far you are in the game. And 3 and 4 becomes fourth is the most challenging one. It's very hard to do compared to the 3 and 2, and depending upon certain champions it makes it much easier to score higher on this boss compared to 3 and 2, right? So let's start with what you need to do first to climb, right? So you need to claim the challenge rewards of 8 million. So you need to do 8 million on 2 to climb to 3, right? And for 3 it's generally easy, right? It's still not as difficult as fourth. Fourth is where the difficulty truly climbs to, you need very specific champions, you need your turns, your survivability is very much lacking. The boss hits much harder, and from 1 to 3 it's just how much harder the boss hits, right? And the accuracy requirements also goes higher. And if you want to check any of that, you can always click on boss's information and it will show you that the enemy has 180 resistance and you need 200. So up to 3, if you're making a team, you need about 200 accuracy. And another thing to note is, like, you can pretty much go in with standard teams. So what do I mean by a standard team? So you typically have a tank. In this case, a tank is somebody. So actually, let's just jump right into it, and I'll show you what I mean by a tank. So in this case, he's my tank. But let's assume that he's specifically also a defense unit, but let's assume he's not a defense unit, right? What I mean by a tank is somebody who's placing the debuffs on the boss. And the one particular debuff that you really need is the attack down, right? Which is going to be attack penalty 2. And that's going to be for 10 seconds, right? You need attack penalty a lot in this game. For every dungeon you will need attack penalty, but in this case particularly you need that to survive as long as possible. And it also alleviates the stress of healing. The heals have to be smaller compared to big heals if you don't have an attack down, and you will survive up to, I think, turn 80 is where it gets very rough. But if you're on rares only, turn 60, turn 50 can also get very challenging, depending upon what rares you have, right? And in a typical team composition, what you'd want is one tank, and this is a debuffer. It could be a support unit as well. You want your healer, so in this case Ogok is my healer, right? And then you want 3 DPS compositions, right? Let's assume you don't have Flora, right? Before we actually go into Flora, somebody else. So in a 3 DPS composition, what it generally means is that my true damage dealer is Flora in this comp, right? And Tona and Eric are my DPS support. They are enabling Flora to do much higher damage than she would do by herself, right? So let's now say you don't have a Flora, right? And your top DPS is either a choice between Tona, which I think would hit harder than Eric, or Eric, right? So the way you design this team is that you go and you say, like, okay, these two are my main DPS units. Who else can I bring in to enable higher damage? So I can bring in Alfie, for example. He's going to make sure with his Nexus, whatever that is, so that the success rate of the wild is higher, right? And the more wild they get, the higher the damage they're going to do. So Tona, or let's assume Eric is my main DPS now. I'm going to be placing the attack something on her so that it boosts the damage of Eric, right? Like, for example, Eric had this artifact, which is the Dawn Pipe Organ, which gives attacks to all ranged units. So ideally it could be on Tona because Alfie and Eric are ranged, so you boost your damage through that as well. So even your artifact selection really matters. I understand that a lot of you don't have legendary artifacts, so you can go in with certain different ones from epic and from rare. That will be beneficial, right? So take Crown of Unclean. It has a very high percentage chance of inflicting defense penalty 1, right? And now you have 75% chance, but in my case, typically it should go on somebody like your tank, the actual guy who's debuffing. But why waste it, right? Like there's a 25% chance that it won't be. So I rather place it on my multi-hitters. So I have witches remain on my toner, right? So I always guarantee that this is going to be placed. If you are using Tona and Eric, right? This is a wild comp example. You can place this on Eric too. Eric has a 5 hitter, and each particular hit has a chance of inflicting that debuff. So with 5 hitters, 75% chance, you're obviously looking at like a much higher probability of placing that defense down, right? Even with the crown. But crown has 75%, so it's okay to even place it on him. You will miss it on 25% of the time, but it's not that big a deal. I would still prefer it if you place it on Eric or Tona. These are your DPS support kind of champions, right? Alfie's ultimate does not hit, so you cannot place on him. His ultimate does not hit, you cannot place on him. And let's say you have, instead of him, you have another healer in this comp. You have somebody like Jillian, or for example, right? You can bring in Jillian. Or let's go to Catherine, for example. You can bring her as a healer, right? And it's easy to build up till 3, right? The damage may vary based on what gear you have, what champions you have, but this is basically the standard team, right? Your 3 DPS, 1 true DPS, and 2 DPS enablers, let's just call them, right? I mean, you can call them whatever you want. I had a discussion on this on on the Dragonheir Discord as well, and there's no consensus of what to call them. But every comp has a 1 true damage dealer and other 2 who are enabling that damage to happen, right? It's not that they're not going to do any damage, but yeah, the one main true DPS is going to do that much. And what you typically want is that the boss has the skill, right? Call of Lightning. This is the game breaker for you. So let's say, for example, that you are building a comp, you have this 3+2 combination. You want the Call of Lightning to not go on your healer. Don't make your healer with too much HP. You want to have your debuffer as the target for it. So in my comp, originally I had, where did Ogok go? So I had Ogok. His HP is close to 75,000, right? And his HP is 100,000. So I want the Call of Lightning to go on him. And you build him not just with HP alone. The way you want to do it is a somewhat of a mix between the two. You want to have a lot of HP, but you also want to have a lot of defense. And stacking up defense is the best way to mitigate damage, right? Besides having the attack penalty and whatnot, this is the best part. Like, you want to have somebody with defense, with high defense, even for like your DPS support, right? So in my original comp, I have Flora here, right? Now my point is, like, if Tona dies, right, Tona is going to be my weakest member because I have the legendaries, right? So whoever is your weakest member, they shouldn't be dying outside of that Call of Lightning. The Call of Lightning is the first area where you should lose a champion. If you're losing on the other ways, increase the defense of some of your DPS supports, right? If I'm using Flora, for example, I want very low attack speed. I want to have higher skill haste so that this battle skill, which is a 3-hitter, I don't really care about the damage. I care that this is 3-hitter, has a very short cooldown, so it can cycle through, in some cases, twice, where Flora does her ultimate, right? And then I had Eric in this team, right? Eric has decent defense as well. He has 2.5k, and he has skill haste as well, right? And I've reduced it to be close to 5 hits during the course of that whirlpool thing that Flora spawns. So you have to be very cognizant of who your true damage dealer is, what this support line is, and everything else. Similarly, let's just say that I was building a lightning team with Evelios, right? I have Evelios. Somehow I got lucky. I pulled Evelios, and I have 2 damage supporters. Let's just plug in this guy and Thormruk. What is his name? Thermus. Okay. So Turnus and Nimbus are going to go with them, and they have the hero gains attack speed buff, which is perfect. His passive is that he will have 20 extra speed for every dauntless, so he's gonna have 3, right? He's gonna count himself, so it's gonna be 60% extra attack speed. So now in this case, what we do next is going to be, since Evelios is my main damage dealer, I'm gonna be building him with a lot of enlightenment, right? And I'm gonna be stacking up attack speed on both of these guys, because his passive if I read this correctly, is that whenever an ally launches a basic attack, the hero has 10% chance and 20% if it's a Dauntless to do derivative lightning damage. This is what I'm looking for, right? So all I want from these two guys is to have a higher attack speed. So I'm going to be building them with a ton of attack speed. I don't care about attack speed on Evelios by himself, because it's the joining attack, is this ally attack that he does, that he's going to do derivative damage, and that ally attack is based on the ally attack speed, not his attack speed. So you have to be very cognizant about who your true damage dealer is and what you can bring as supports for him, right? Now let's talk about these two, your tank and your healer. So like I said, the tank has to be the highest HP. He also has to have decent amount of accuracy. And the way you build accuracy is that you look at your psyche core, you look at the progression, you see, okay, I have no accuracy from my psyche core, right? So if I go here, right now it can give me accuracy 50, defense plus 50, HP 500, attack 50, right? I'm getting no accuracy from here right now because I don't have 3 affinity, but you get what I mean, right? So I don't need 200, it was requirement, so I only need about 150 accuracy. So I can spare the rest on his defense or his HP, depending upon what gear you have. And you also want skill haste. Skill haste is not, it's not that you don't need it. You can always time these ultimates. It's not the ultimate that I'm concerned about. It's always the battle skill. The battle skill is also pretty good. It has a 75% chance of dispelling one buff, grants 15% shield to an ally with lowest HP. So all this is really good. So I want to cycle that ability really fast. Same with Olok, right? I want to cycle this battle skill really fast. And let's say you don't have these champions, right? Like you're looking for something with, you're building epics, for example. You have her and Catherine, right? So even if you look at his battle skill, in this case, even then it's good because he will grant himself hit recovery. So at least he will be top HP, because Catherine, no matter how well you build her, is not going to be able to fully heal Garius in this case, right? I mean, in this case, we don't have an attack down, so probably bring in Clovis, right? He has attack down. Yep. So Clovis is going to be my target for the Call of Lightning, right? And his defense up, I want it, right? I want it as quick, as often as I can. So it's going to be a 10-second recharge when fully booked, right? And I want to reduce that time. The downtime is what you're reducing. There's a 5-second window between the boss's skill, right? So you want to have that defense up as much as possible, so Clovis will stay alive and is not entirely dependent upon your Garius to have this heal going, right? And Garius is going to heal of 60% defense, so it's perfect. You don't need to build him with a lot of HP. You just build him with a lot of defense and keep his HP lower. It can be 1 HP lower. It has to be lower than Clovis, right? And that's the basic mechanic of building the team. If your champions are dying, at least till stage 3, if your champions are dying from any of the boss's skill first, so if they die over here, if they die over here, there's something fundamentally that has gone wrong, right? That means that there's some inconsistency. You're not having attack down for a long period of time, or there's something just not right. The first champion should always die with the Call of Lightning. And that's the basic rule of Vortex. If you want to score high, the first champion should always die with, this is the hardest hitting skill of the boss. And this is what should take down your tank. Once your tank dies, even if your entire team dies the next very skill of the boss, it's still okay. Because you did your job, you build your team with enough sustain, you looked at each one of the skills, and it's fine. Early on, you can still use 3 supports, right? So in this case, I may not have attack down for all the time, right? It's going to be for 10 seconds, and there's going to be a 20 seconds reach ability. So I'm going to be taking some hits, some of the boss's skill head on, right? So I can probably bring in another, let's say lightning in this case. I can probably bring in another attack penalty person, so that the attack penalty, I can stagger the ultimate. So the attack penalty is going to stay there all the time, right? This is what kills you outside of this thing as well. Unless you have somebody like Urgander who can place attack down basically constantly, it's not going to matter much. So what about the healer then, right? So let's bring in something like Catherine. Oh, I should be looking at Radiance. Right. So Catherine heals based and provides them with defense, debuff immunity. So she's actually really good. She can carry you over to 4 as well, and I'm going to talk about 4 as well in a moment. And you want to check what she's going to granting this, what stat is she going to use. So you read this 10% target max HP and 25% enlightenment, right? There's no reason to build her with high max HP. She's not going to use that HP in any way. So you build her with a lot of defense, decent enough HP, and a lot of enlightenment. Basically meaning you go enlightenment positive ruin. You have enlightenment on your what's it called, chest piece, and if you possibly can have enlightenment on this one, but any artifact that is increasing healing is good enough. And then you go defense percentage with HP percentage sub rolls, right? That's what you want to do. Same with your negative ruin. You want something with defense, with a lot of defense and HP percentage at the substats. And this is how you will be building your team for Vortex. Now, this is up to 3. On 4, it becomes really challenging, right? The reason that 4 is so challenging is because this third ability is going to do defense down. And this is where most teams will basically just collapse, right? I think it's turn 45 starting onwards. It's very hard to deal with it. You have to make sure that you have both attack down and you have some sort of a debuff immunity before the skill is placed, or some sort of a cleanse going after this is placed, right? And the way you do it is, so Ogog is particularly amazing with this because his ultimate, the way I time it is that it places this immortality right before. My champions drop to 0 and then 5 seconds later they're back to full HP. So you want to place it right before the third skill. You are immortal and you heal back to full. And this is how I built him as well, with a lot of enlightenment and a lot of attack, because those are the multipliers that he will be using. So I have enlightenment chest, enlightenment positive ruin to heal everybody, right? And then artifact is something to support the DPS units. And the same way you will be doing with somebody like, so Garrus is very interesting in this one. Garrus is amazing. He cleanses everybody too. But the biggest problem that occurs is that you have to be healing right after you take that skill 3, right? So before going from skill 2 to skill 3, your team needs some kind of a survivability that it can take all the hits, because that skill hits really hard. So he is good, but he's not going to be as good as somebody like Catherine, right? Because with Catherine, I need to ultimate before, right? And I can have this debuff immunity on me for skill 3, and I will be back to full HP, right? After skill 3, now I need to find another way to heal myself, right? So that's why like having some sort of a combo going is really important, especially on Vortex 4. You may want to even consider dropping 3 DPS to 2 DPS and bringing in 3 supports, right? I have 1 heal from her, 1 heal from him, and then I have my support unit, the debuffer, who's going to place attack down. So let's just bring Clovis in as well, right? And I have some sort of a way to sustain, like how far you can go and how much damage you can do. I can survive maybe 150 turns if I really want to try hard, but my damage is not going to be that much. So you have to find a balance somewhere between, okay, I'm gonna only survive 50 turns, that's fine, but I'm gonna use 3 DPS, right? So you still go 3 DPS, and where's Eric? Here, right? You still go 3 DPS. You know that you're not gonna survive till about 50 turns, but you're gonna do more damage, right? With 3 DPS versus 2 DPS. So that's how you have to really think about it, like whether it's worth it to add another third support just for this. And that's how you will be doing damage. And you can do 15 million, especially at end game level. You will be able to do 15 million. I think the last one requirement is not this thing, challenge rewards. So 25 million, sorry, is the reward. This is very hard to get, especially if you're free to play or if you're like a low spender. This is your first season. In all these conditions, this is a hard target to hit, but don't be discouraged. This is fine. 15 million, reaching 15 million is fine. You can reach 25 million once you complete one season and you use the rewards to basically either get better champions, and you will be able to do much more in the next season. So this is obviously very daunting. 25 million, if you don't have a lot of good champions in the game, this can seem very challenging. And if you have only 2 good DPS, use them and with 3 supports, right? As long as you're able to have that 5 affinity bonus, right? If I didn't have, like, let's say I just have 2 DPS in this, I'll say like, okay, in that case, I'll go for higher survivability, right? I'll bring in somebody else, maybe Wycook, right? Here. So he's gonna also have, he's gonna cleanse, and he's also gonna heal. He's also gonna place attack penalty too. So there's something going on always, and your team is kind of protected overall, right? They're gonna be cushioned. Or I can also bring in, where's this other dude? Here, Adolphus, right? Adolphus has a crazy amount of shields, so I can shield myself for a long period of time. He's going to provide me with a shield on the first 2 abilities. He's going to provide me shields on the last 2 abilities, right? So that's how I will go about and say like, okay, this makes the most sense for me to survive for longer, because I don't have a third DPS. I know that I cannot survive more than 40 turns on 3 DPS, and I don't have another DPS right now, or they're pretty bad. They're not from the wild aspect, they're from the poison aspect and poison affinity, and I just can't find the synergy. Then use 3 supports. That's perfectly fine, right? Your tank is still going to be one of these. It's never going to be your healer. Just keep in mind, healers should never be your target for the Call of Lightning strike. Call of Lightning should also always go on somebody who's not healing your team, right? And next, let's talk about skill timings, right? So let's take this out. Let's go to my original team. All right, so they're placed here, right? So the way the skill timing thing works is that you can always save your team here, and you can edit the skill timings. But before doing that, you gotta check what your actual skill times are, right? Because you will have some sort of haste through either a set bonus or through some sort of skill haste from the ruins. You want to check how much is the skill haste you're getting. So in this case, I will be going to do my ultimate 19.23. Let's leave these 2 for now, right? Her ultimate, the first initial charge is going to be 11.5 roughly, and the next one is going to be 19.15, right? And my Flora is going to do after 10.5 seconds roughly, and 19.31. Okay, so Flora is slower, 19.31. I need to remember that. 19.08. So Flora is my slowest. Now, in a Flora comp, typically, you want her to ultimate first, then these 2 ultimate right after, right? I mean, Flora Tonalan is going to go right next, and then right after her, Eric is going to go, right? So when you want to fully utilize this whirlpool that she does, so the boss takes insane amount of damage. And the way you do that is, so if I go here and edit my skill timings, I have 19.4 for her, which is her slowest, right? And 19.4 for both of them. My first ultimate is going to be 11.3. 11.5 was her slowest, and then 12, half a second delay for Eric. I can also make this 11.7. It won't matter. You can't have 1 decimal place away. So if this is 11.3, I cannot make it 11.4. What happens in the game is the way it is coded or something, I don't know, but she is going to ultimate right with her. That's what happens. So I give like a 0.2 seconds delay between them. And then 19.4 for the slowest DPS champion, right? Let's say Tona was my slowest and she was 20. I would have to make everybody 20 over here. For Urgok and for Kairosos, right? So the way the team works, on the boss's third skill, right before this, I will be placing Urgok's Unkillable, right? So my team heals fully before the fourth strike. And before the fourth strike, the way that works is the boss ultimate meter reaches fourth, but the strike happens with a slight delay. Like it will happen like close to when the bar is filling. So if you can imagine it, it will be like right here when the boss actually hits. So I will place my Kairos' ultimate right before that fourth skill hits me. And that is going to prevent my entire team from basically dying. Right, on the fourth skill, they're going to have a massive shield on themselves. The boss will have attack down again. If Urgok didn't place an attack down with his battle skill, he's going to have attack down here. So he's going to have attack down here on this strike as well, and then here as well. So I need to make sure that my champions can survive this one and this last hit, right? As long as they're able to survive these two, I can just carry on, so on and so forth. Because right after third skill, they're healed to max. And fourth skill, the second skill is going to go on Kairosos, who has a very high defense, so he's not going to die, right? So the way I time it, the first skill I have to place manually, but the next skill, this is 20.4. The game does this. I don't know why. The interval is 20.4. If you read the boss's information, it seems like, the boss does his ultimate every 20 seconds, but that's not the case. He does his ultimate every 20.4-ish stuff. Like his ability cycle through, not ultimate, I should say. His ability cycle every 20.4. So with 25.4, it's very close. It's still not perfect. You will have to go mid run to, manual them, slightly delay them a little bit, but it's better to be faster than slower. And even with just 4.1, it will be delayed. It's somewhere in between 2.4 and 2.41. So this is how I generally do my runs, right? Now, in the fourth difficulty, you have to deal with the defense penalty. And once you set your team up, if you are using, let's say, a 3 support, 2 DPS, like let's bring in Catherine again and Clovis, right? Maybe you're using some rally champions, I don't know, but I'm just giving an example. You can basically pick this from anywhere, right? From any affinity, we'll have 2 healers, a cleanser, and somebody who's doing a debuff, attack penalty to debuff, right? He's my Call of Lightning target. As I said, the debuffer is going to be your target for the Call of Lightning. Then is Garius, and then is her, right? So the way I'm going to time their ultimate is, Garius is going to place his attack penalty 2 right before the fourth skill hits, right? So I'm going to have attack penalty 2 on the first hit of the boss and on the Call of Lightning. Then Clovis then Garius is going to heal me back full before the third strike. Actually, sorry, Catherine is going to heal me back up full before the third strike. And that grants them debuff immunity, right? I'm going to take the third and the fourth hit and then heal myself back to full. So you got to match these two's ultimate, and she will be ultimating right before the third. That way your team has much higher survivability, right? And you can fluctuate as well. Like if you feel like, oh, my champions are dying, so you can place it to be right after the third skill. So she heals before the third skill, then you only take the fourth hit from the boss with the attack penalty down, right? So that's how I will recommend you to build your teams. Really think about who's your true DPS, who's going to be your DPS enabler or supporter. And then you have these 3 supports, or you want to go 2 supports. Up till 3 difficulty, you should be only using 2 supports. But after 3, you can use 3 supports, depending upon how many champs you have. But that was pretty much up for today, guys. I'll catch you guys later. Hopefully you if you learned something new from this. I'm sure you all know this by already, but yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Until then, take care.